My name's Aaron Ralston. My parents are Donna and Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
He cut off his own arm to live. Alone in a canyon for 5 days, Aaron Ralston faced thirst, hallucinations, and certain death. And when there was no other choice, he did the unthinkable, with a cheap multi-tool and sheer willpower. But before that moment, before the knife, before the snapping bones, Aaron was just another weekend adventurer, a man who loved wild places, the kind you only find in the deserts of Utah. He hiked alone. He told no one where he was going. And on April 25, 2003, that decision would leave him trapped, 60 feet below ground, wedged between rock and death. Aaron Ralston wasn't a reckless thrill seeker. He was an engineer turned outdoor enthusiast who loved mountains, canyons, and the silence of wild places. Friends called him obsessive, meticulous. He trained his body like an athlete and logged every climb and descent with military precision. He spent weekends chasing cliffs others avoided, driven by the challenge of going where few dared.
Last night was pretty rough. I had water right here in front of the door sill.
In his early 30s, he had already quit a comfortable engineering job at Intel to chase adventure full-time. For Aaron, risk wasn't the point. It was about self-reliance. Knowing that when you're deep in the wilderness, knowing is coming to save you. The philosophy shaped how he planned and how he pushed himself. On April 25, 2003, he set out alone to explore Bluejohn Canyon in Utah. He told no one. He left no note. For a man so skilled, it was just another Saturday. The kind of decision that felt ordinary until it wasn't. Because in a place like Bluejohn, a single misstep can decide whether you walk out or never leave at all. Midway through a narrow slot canyon, disaster struck. As Aaron descended a crevice, an 800-pound boulder shifted, suddenly and without warning, slamming down and trapping his right hand against a canyon wall. The sound was deafening, a dull thud, a dust rising in the air. For a moment, he thought it was temporary. He twisted, he pulled, he braced his feet against the canyon walls and pushed with all his strength. But nothing moved. The stone seemed almost alive, as if the desert itself had decided to keep him there. He tried every angle, rotating his wrist, pulling his arm, even attempting to chip away at the rock with his knife. Minutes turned into hours, his skin scraping raw against the sandstone. No matter what he tried, the boulder didn't shift an inch. It was immovable. It was permanent. And in that silence, deep in the canyon where no one could hear him, Aaron realized a truth more terrifying than the pain in his arm. He was completely, utterly trapped, and the canyon wasn't letting go. At first, he believed rescue was possible. Maybe hikers would come by. Maybe he'd wrench free with one last burst of strength. The canyon wasn't exactly famous, but people did pass by. Hope was still alive. He rationed carefully, just 350 ml of water. He sipped in tiny drops that barely wet his tongue. His food? 2 burritos and a few crumbs from an energy bar. He placed each wrapper neatly beside him, not because he thought he'd need them, but because keeping order gave him a sense of control. He shouted for hours, his voice bouncing uselessly off sandstone walls. The echoes returned, but no human voice ever answered. He tried rigging a pulley with his climbing gear, pushing his body until sweat drenched his clothes and his muscles trembled. Still, the boulder stayed. Still, his arms remained pinned. And as the sun set on that first night, the canyon swallowed him in silence. For the first time, Aaron began to wonder, not if he'd get out, but how long it would take before hope ran dry. By day 3, his water was gone, his lips cracked, his throat burned, and the only liquid left was his own urine. He hesitated, ashamed, then forced himself to drink, because survival left no room for pride. The desert was merciless. By day, the heat pressed down like a furnace, sucking the strength from his body. By night, the temperature dropped so low his teeth chattered uncontrollably. His body shrank, muscles wasting away, skin pale beneath layers of dust. Sleep came only in broken fragments, haunted by dreams of rescue that vanished when he opened his eyes to the same immovable boulder. He began hallucinating, seeing friends, hearing voices, even catching glimpses of water that wasn't there. On the canyon wall, he carved his name, his birth date, and what he believed would be the date of his death. Each scratch of the blade was both a record and a goodbye. He filmed final messages to his family, telling them he loved them, trying to keep his voice steady even as his strength drained away. But just as his body seemed ready to surrender, a vision appeared, Aaron holding a future child, and with it came a thought so extreme it terrified him, yet it refused to leave his mind. By the 5th day, Aaron understood the canyon wasn't letting him go. Rescue wasn't coming. His body was failing, and time had run out. The only way forward was through an idea so horrific it almost broke him: to amputate his own arm. He tested the thought in his mind, recoiling each time, but the vision of holding his future child returned again and again, reminding him that life still waited on the other side of pain. That vision became his anchor. He prepared himself like an engineer solving a puzzle. He tightened a makeshift tourniquet to slow the blood. He examined a dull multi-tool in his pocket, the cheap kind you buy at a hardware store, never meant for surgery. The blade was dull, the pliers rusted, but it was all he had. First, he cut out the skin, feeling every slice, then the muscle, layer by layer, until he reached the bone. The knife couldn't cut it. He braced his arm against the rock, summoning the last of his strength. And in that instant, he knew, if he wanted freedom, he would have to break himself to save himself. Bleeding and half delirious, Aaron knew the nightmare wasn't over. He still had to get out. With one arm gone, he rappelled over a sheer 65-foot cliff, using the same ropes he had set up days earlier, never imagining he'd descend in this state. Every moment burned. The rope tore at his skin. Sweat stung the open wound. But he pushed downward step by shaky step. When he reached the bottom, the desert stretched before him, 6 miles of brutal terrain between him and survival. He staggered forward, each step leaving blood on the sand. The sun beat down. His vision blurred, and his body wanted to collapse, but he kept moving, driven by a single thought: if he stopped, he died here. Finally, he saw figures in the distance, a family of hikers. At first, he thought they were mirages, but as they drew closer, their shocked faces told him this time it was real. They gave him water, rushed to find help, and stayed by his side until a helicopter roared overhead. When the rescuers lifted him away, Aaron had lost nearly all his blood and 40 pounds of weight, but against every odd, he was alive, and the world was about to hear his story. Aaron's story spread worldwide. His survival became a symbol of grit and willpower. He wrote a memoir, Between a Rock and a Hard Place.
Between them, and then also getting to do the work that I get to do, which I look at it all as a gift, really, that among the many gifts that have come into my life since 12 years ago when I walked into Bluejohn Canyon, that I get the chance now to share my experience there and hopefully make it relevant and encourage people in the boulders that they might face in life.
Hollywood turned it into the film 127 Hours. Aaron returned to climbing with a prosthetic arm, summiting peaks, biking and kayaking. He refused to let the canyon define him. Years later, when asked how he endured it, his answer was simple: I chose life. Alone in the desert, Aaron Ralston faced a choice most of us cannot imagine, and by making the hardest decision, he showed what the human will can endure. A reminder, sometimes survival means letting go, to keep going. If this story gripped you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We bring you true survival tales every week. Thank you for watching.